Have you ever thought that Canada, the quiet, kind, and always loyal neighbor of the United States, would be the first to break away from the northern giant? Well, it just happened. And it's not a fleeting misunderstanding, it's not just another diplomatic adjustment, it's a historic rupture that could shake the world power map as we know it. Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover not only redefines the relationship between two countries, but also reveals the decline of an empire that, for the first time in decades, sees one of its closest allies turn its back with total and absolute determination. This is News for Dummies, and today we're taking you straight into the heart of the diplomatic collapse no one saw coming, but that will change everything. For more than 40 years, Canada and the United States presented themselves to the world as inseparable partners, as Siamese twins of trade, diplomacy, and international cooperation. But that image of brotherhood was just that, an image. Behind the scenes, the relationship was marked by pressure, economic manipulation, and the constant imposition of rules designed to favor Washington. And today, after years of silent resistance, Canada has finally shouted enough. Prime Minister Mark Carney, in a brief but devastating speech, made it clear that the era of blind obedience is over. There's no going back, no second chances. The United States can no longer count on Canada as its submissive partner. What triggered this monumental rupture? One name sums it all up: Donald Trump. Since his arrival at the White House, Trump turned foreign policy into a game of threats, insults, and open humiliations. For Canada, this translated into a bombardment of unjustified tariffs, from lumber to steel, from milk to wheat. No sector was spared from an economic war designed to subdue, not to negotiate. And as if that weren't enough, Trump dropped the ultimate bomb. He publicly suggested that Canada could become the 51st state of the United States. It wasn't a slip-up, it wasn't a joke. It was a brutal warning of absorption, a direct threat to Canadian sovereignty. But this time, the intimidation strategy didn't work. Mark Carney, with the poise of someone who understands the historic gravity of his words, responded bluntly: Canada is not, and will never be, part of the United States. It was the diplomatic equivalent of erecting a steel wall between Ottawa and Washington, and making it clear that it would not be brought down by threats or by commercial blackmail. Because what was at stake wasn't just a treaty nor a tariff here or there. What Trump broke was something much deeper: trust. The systematic abuse by the Trump administration left no room for doubt. Canada realized that remaining tied to an unpredictable partner was digging its own economic and political grave. Every factory, every farm, every Canadian family felt the weight of policies designed not to strengthen cooperation but to crush any resistance. The productive sectors were the first to sound the alarm. Export costs skyrocketed, tariff barriers suffocated producers, and the rhetoric of trade war became a daily norm. There was no doubt, the relationship was rotten to the core. And even so, for years, Canada endured. It endured when Trump imposed national security tariffs on Canadian products, as if Alberta's cows were weapons of mass destruction. It endured when it was ignored at international summits, insulted in official statements, scorned in fiery speeches. But every patience has a limit, and Trump not only reached it, he pulverized it. The threat to turn Canada into just another state within the American empire was the last straw, the spark that ignited a silent rebellion that had been brewing for some time. The rupture is not simply a diplomatic tantrum, it's a calculated strategy, a modern declaration of independence. Carney did not improvise his words. They were measured, polished, and launched like darts aimed straight at the heart of a system of structural abuse. With a single speech, Carney ended more than 40 years of political subordination, marked a before and after in bilateral relations, and lit a fuse that could inspire other allies to follow suit. The international reaction was swift. From Berlin to Buenos Aires, passing through Brussels and Tokyo, diplomats and world leaders watched closely, and in many cases with admiration. Because Canada's rebellion against imperial abuse is seen as an act of dignity in times when dignity is scarce. In diplomatic corridors, the message is clear. If Canada, the closest and most reliable ally of the United States, dared to break away, then no one is truly irreversibly tied. Meanwhile in Washington, the bewilderment is absolute. Trump, used to his threats bending knees, this time faced an impenetrable wall. His communications team tried to put out the fire by labeling his comments as an exaggeration, but it was already too late. The bomb had already exploded, and the shrapnel from this historic rupture will continue to impact for years to come. The economic impact of this rupture will also be profound. Canada is already redesigning its alliance map, seeking to strengthen trade relations with Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Meanwhile, the United States faces the beginning of progressive isolation, the loss of respect from its allies, a currency more valuable than any dollar. Within Canada, Carney's decision has been met with a mix of pride and determination. Entrepreneurs, academics, media outlets, and everyday citizens recognize that, although the adjustment will be tough, it was necessary. Because no country can thrive when its sovereignty is under constant threat. Carney's speech has echoed like a cry of freedom, reminding the world that even giants can be confronted, that even empires can be challenged. Today, Canada looks forward with a new compass, one guided by its own national interest, its dignity, and its right to decide its destiny without impositions. While Trump continues playing his game of threats and tariffs, Canada has taken the hardest and bravest step. It has said no. No to abuse, no to dependence, no to absorption. And that no, more than a rupture, is a rebirth. This is the beginning of a new era, one in which allies are not defined by their submission but by their mutual respect. Canada has chosen the path of freedom, and the entire world is watching. The rupture between Canada and the United States marks a defining moment in modern geopolitics. For decades, the alliance between these two nations was perceived as unbreakable, but under the surface, tensions brewed that finally erupted into a decisive break. Canada's refusal to continue playing the submissive role signals not just a bilateral fallout, but a shift in the global order, where smaller nations are asserting their sovereignty against traditional powers. Prime Minister Mark Carney's bold stance is a message heard around the world. Dignity and independence are non-negotiable. This isn't simply a reaction to a few tariffs or insults. It is the culmination of years of systemic abuse and disregard. As Canada charts a new course with diversified alliances, the United States faces a future where trust from its closest allies can no longer be taken for granted. The shockwaves from this separation will reshape economic strategies, diplomatic relationships, and the very structure of international alliances. History is being written before our eyes, and what started as a silent rebellion could very well ignite a broader movement among global allies. Canada's stand is not just a rejection, it's a rebirth, and the world is watching closely to see what comes next. Now it's your turn. If you found this analysis revealing, leave us a comment with your opinion on this historic rupture. Do you think Canada's bold move will inspire other U.S. allies to break away? What could this mean for America's future on the world stage? Subscribe if you haven't already, because we'll be following this seismic shift in global alliances step by step. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video, where we'll dive into how this move could trigger a domino effect across Europe and Asia. And if you want to understand more about how U.S. foreign policy missteps have reshaped international dynamics, click now on the video on screen. I promise, it will open your eyes even more.